Level 1, failed coach. This is the bottom rung of NBA coaching, the place where reputations go to die. Failed coaches are the ones who never establish credibility, who lose their locker rooms almost instantly, and who leave behind records so ugly that they become memes. Sometimes these coaches arrive with hype. Maybe they were a hot assistant, maybe they had a reputation as disciplinarians, maybe they were billed as culture changers. But when given the job, they crash. Their teams look unprepared, their rotations make no sense, and their players tune them out long before management finally pulls the plug. This level isn't for coaches who had one bad season and bounced back somewhere else. It's for the names who flopped so hard that fans still roll their eyes when they hear them mentioned. They're remembered less for X's and O's and more for embarrassment. The failed coach is not just unsuccessful, he's defined by being unfit for the role from the start. Jim Boylen is the poster child for this tier. When the Chicago Bulls hired him in 2018, fans hoped he could restore order to a young, rebuilding roster. What they got instead was chaos. Boylen quickly became infamous for old-school tactics that felt more like high school drills than NBA coaching. He had players running suicides and doing push-ups in practice, and he called late-game timeouts and blowouts that even his own players openly mocked. His management style clashed with his roster almost immediately. Players like Zach LaVine and Lauri Markkanen bristled at his methods, and reports of locker room frustration poured out almost weekly. On the court, the results were even worse. Boylen's Bulls looked disorganized, finishing near the bottom of the league in offense and defense. His rotations were criticized constantly, benching hot players for no reason, riding out mismatches, and doubling down on strategies that clearly weren't working. Over 2 seasons, he posted a 39-84 record, one of the worst stretches in franchise history. By the time Chicago moved on, fans weren't just relieved, they were embarrassed it had lasted as long as it did. Boylen didn't rebuild culture, he destroyed it, and his tenure is remembered as a low point for one of the NBA's proudest franchises. Level 2, flashes without staying power. This tier belongs to the coaches who had moments of promise, maybe even seasons where everything seemed to click, but who could never sustain it. They're not complete disasters like the failed tier. They usually have resumes with playoff appearances or impressive offensive stretches. But when the dust settles, their careers are defined by inconsistency. These coaches tease fan bases with hope, then leave them frustrated when the success fades away. Sometimes it's because they inherit a talented roster and ride it to a short burst of wins. Other times, it's because their system catches fire for a year before the league adjusts. Either way, the story always ends the same. Flashes of brilliance without the staying power to join the game's elite. Alvin Gentry is a perfect example. A longtime NBA assistant and interim coach, Gentry's head coaching career is filled with brief highs followed by steep drop-offs. His defining run came with the Phoenix Suns in 2010 when he guided Steve Nash, Amare Stoudemire, and one of the league's most entertaining offenses all the way to the Western Conference Finals. That magical stretch had fans believing Gentry had found the formula. The Suns ran through opponents with pace, ball movement, and spacing that was ahead of its time. But almost as quickly as it started, it was over. Within a year, Phoenix slipped back into mediocrity, and Gentry couldn't recapture the magic. His later stints with teams like the New Orleans Pelicans showed similar patterns. Brief offensive surges, exciting stretches of play, and then long losing streaks that erased the progress. His career record as a head coach sits below .500, proof of how fleeting those flashes were. That's what this tier is all about. Alvin Gentry will always be remembered for that 2010 Suns run, and if fans of teams he's coached can point to games where his offense looked unstoppable. But those moments never lasted. Instead, his legacy is one of missed opportunities and short-lived success. He's not a failure. He's a reminder that in the NBA, one good year isn't enough. Without consistency, the flashes fade, and all that's left is the frustration of what might have been. Level 3, journeyman coach. This level is for the coaches who always seem to land another job, even if they never quite deliver championship results. Journeyman coaches are respected enough to stay employed, but never cement themselves as franchise-defining leaders. They move from team to team, sometimes as the steady hand needed to stabilize a roster, other times as placeholders until a front office finds its long-term answer. Their resumes are filled with decent seasons, playoff appearances, and occasional overachieving squads, but they're rarely remembered for winning at all. What makes them unique is longevity. They're in demand because they know the game, command respect, and can keep a team competitive, even if they're not steering it toward a title. Del Harris fits this tier perfectly. Over a coaching career that spanned decades, Harris became known as a smart basketball mind who could guide teams to respectability, but not to greatness. He coached the Houston Rockets, Milwaukee Bucks, and Los Angeles Lakers, compiling nearly 500 career wins. With the Lakers in the mid-90s, Harris even won NBA Coach of the Year in 1995, and helped usher a young Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal into their early years together. But as history shows, he wasn't the one to take them to the next level. The Lakers were consistently good under his watch, but when it came time to win championships, Harris was replaced. The same story played out across his career. Good, steady basketball, but not the kind of leadership that etched names into history. That's exactly what the journeyman tier represents. Harris wasn't a failure, far from it. He was respected enough to keep getting opportunities and left behind a record that proves he could win in the regular season. But he never built a dynasty or lifted the Larry O'Brien trophy. His name is remembered more as a stepping stone than a finish line. For franchises, a coach like Del Harris is invaluable when stability is needed. But when it comes to hanging banners, he represents the ceiling of this tier. Reliable, competent, and always in the conversation, but never in the history books as one of the game's greatest. Level 4, reliable coach, but not yet elite. This level belongs to the coaches who prove they can win, who put together strong regular seasons, make deep playoff runs, and even capture championships, but who never escape the shadow of inconsistency or missed opportunities. Reliable coaches are good enough to keep a franchise relevant for years, but their resumes usually come with caveats. They have the talent, the strategy, and the leadership to get into the postseason consistently, yet too often they fall short in critical moments. These coaches are respected throughout the league and can always find a job. But when conversations about the very best begin, they're left a tier below. Their careers represent stability and competence, but not all-time dominance. Doc Rivers is the perfect example of this tier. When he won an NBA championship with the Boston Celtics in 2008, his reputation skyrocketed. Leading a roster built around Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen, Rivers brought toughness, discipline, and accountability to a franchise that desperately needed direction. That title put him into the conversation as one of the league's premier coaches. But as his career unfolded, a different narrative emerged. Rivers' teams were consistently good, often excellent in the regular season. But in the playoffs, they developed a troubling habit of collapsing. He became synonymous with blown series leads, including multiple 3-1 and 3-2 advantages that slipped away. With the Clippers, despite coaching superstars like Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, and later Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, Rivers could never push the team to its first conference finals. His stints in Philadelphia followed a similar pattern. Strong regular seasons, disappointing playoff exits, and more criticism about his ability to adjust under pressure. None of this erases what Rivers has accomplished. He's won over 1,000 games, one of only a handful of coaches in NBA history to reach that milestone. He's respected for his ability to manage egos, unite locker rooms, and consistently produce winning teams. But the gap between his reputation and his results in big moments is what keeps him out of the elite or all-time great conversation. Rivers is the model of this level, a coach who you trust to make your team competitive, maybe even deliver a title if everything aligns, but who too often leaves fans wondering what could have been. Level 5, Elite Coach. This tier is reserved for the coaches who don't just win, they change the culture of a franchise and leave behind legacies that last for decades. Elite coaches are bigger than one season or one roster. They're remembered for shaping an identity, for instilling toughness or creativity that makes their teams feared throughout the league. They often have championships on their resumes, but what truly defines them is influence. Their fingerprints are all over their team's style of play, and their reputations are tied to eras of dominance. Unlike the reliable tier, these coaches aren't remembered for blown opportunities, they're remembered for seizing them. Chuck Daly fits this tier perfectly. Hired by the Detroit Pistons in the 1980s, Daly took a team of talented but unpolished players and forged them into one of the most iconic squads in NBA history, the Bad Boys. Under his leadership, Detroit became the toughest, most intimidating team in basketball. They played physical, bruising defense, and they embraced the villain role that made opponents and fans alike love to hate them. Daly managed to channel the fiery personalities of Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, Dennis Rodman, and Joe Dumars into a cohesive unit that not only won, but redefined the way championship basketball could be played. The result was back-to-back titles in 1989 and 1990, and 2 seasons where the Pistons stood toe-to-toe with the Celtics, Lakers, and Bulls and came out on top. Daly's greatness wasn't just in the schemes. It was in his ability to manage egos and personalities. He earned his players' respect by allowing them to be themselves while demanding discipline when it mattered most. Beyond Detroit, Daly's coaching resume reached another historic peak when he was chosen to lead the 1992 Dream Team, arguably the greatest collection of basketball talent ever assembled. His ability to command respect, even among the NBA's brightest stars, solidified his reputation as one of the finest leaders the sport has ever seen. Level 6, all-time great. This tier is reserved for the coaches who didn't just win championships. They built dynasties and reshaped the way the game is played. All-time greats are innovators, leaders, and builders of culture. Their impact stretches beyond their own teams, influencing how other franchises and even future generations of coaches approach the sport. These coaches win across decades, adapt to changing rosters and eras, and leave behind resumes that guarantee immortality in basketball history. They are remembered not just for rings, but for consistency, longevity, and the ability to keep their teams competitive year after year. The only thing that keeps them out of the GOAT tier is that one name sits just above them. But make no mistake, these are legends in every sense. Greg Popovich is the perfect fit for this level. Taking over the San Antonio Spurs in the mid-1990s, Popovich turned a small market team into one of the greatest dynasties in NBA history. Over 2 decades, he led the Spurs to 5 championships, 22 consecutive playoff appearances, and a reputation for excellence that extended far beyond wins and losses. Popovich's greatness lies in his adaptability. With Tim Duncan, David Robinson, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili, the Spurs played a methodical, defense-first style that suffocated opponents. But as the league evolved, so did Pop. By the mid-2000s, his Spurs became a model of ball movement and spacing, culminating in the 2014 finals where they dismantled LeBron James's Miami Heat with some of the most beautiful team basketball ever played. Beyond tactics, Popovich's legacy is also about culture. He demanded discipline, but also cared deeply for his players, earning respect that went far beyond the court. He developed late draft picks into stars, turned overlooked role players into household names, and created an environment where egos were secondary to winning. Coaches across the league now try to emulate his approach, from his in-game adjustments to his emphasis on player development. His influence also extends globally, with international players thriving under his system and contributing to the NBA's global growth. Popovich embodies the all-time great tier because he checks every box: longevity, innovation, adaptability, and championships. He's one of the most respected minds in the history of basketball, and his impact will be felt long after he retires. Still, even with his 5 titles and historic consistency, there is one name above him, the coach who won more rings than anyone and stands alone at the very top. Level 7, the GOAT. This is the highest level, the peak of the mountain, the spot where only one name can stand. The GOAT coach isn't just defined by wins, but by the ability to dominate across different teams, different eras, and with different rosters. He's the coach who took superstars, blended them into cohesive dynasties, and produced championship after championship. His influence goes beyond the hardwood. He shaped culture, managed egos, and delivered results so consistently that his resume looks more like a fantasy than reality. At this level, the conversation doesn't stretch across multiple names. It stops with one. That name is Phil Jackson, known as the Zen Master. Jackson is the winningest coach in NBA history, with 11 championships on his record. He built 2 separate dynasties. First with the Chicago Bulls, where he guided Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and later Dennis Rodman to 6 titles in the 1990s. And then with the Los Angeles Lakers, where he led Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal to 3 straight championships before later returning to win 2 more with Kobe. Jackson didn't just win because he had talent. Plenty of coaches had talent. He won because he knew how to harness it. His mastery of the triangle offense created spacing and ball movement that maximized his stars, but it was his leadership that truly set him apart. Jackson had the unique ability to manage massive personalities, from Jordan's obsession with winning to Shaq and Kobe's infamous rivalry, and mold them into championship caliber teams. His influence went beyond X's and O's. Jackson brought a calm, almost philosophical approach to the game. Meditation, team-building exercises, and his focus on mental discipline created an atmosphere where players bought in completely, and the results spoke for themselves. Wherever Jackson went, winning followed. He never had a losing season as a head coach, and his .704 winning percentage is the highest in NBA history. His legacy isn't just about the rings, it's about how he consistently elevated teams to their absolute peak. Phil Jackson defines the GOAT tier because his accomplishments are untouchable. 11 rings, 2 dynasties, and a career that redefined what it meant to be an NBA coach. While other names deserve mention as all-time greats, the conversation about the greatest ends here. Phil Jackson stands alone. If you like this video, consider watching this next one, which YouTube thinks you are going to really love.